Hello, hello, and welcome to the Color Whisperers show, where we talk about all things home and healing. Today I'm a little tech challenged, and so we'll see how this goes. But I'm on my phone today, so I'll try to make it right. But anyway, first of all, I should tell you all that my sister is home and doing well. That was a pretty stressful week last week, and I still don't know what's wrong with her. But yeah, it's all right. I've got other ways to deal with this. I did a lot of healing on her and she seems to be getting better. So, yay. I've got a new healing technique, which is really cool. Um, and it's really nice because I don't have to do it in front of her. And it it just is very light. Sometimes healing techniques can really tire you out because it's a lot of work. Um, Going through the change, releasing all that stuff is a lot of work. But this one's very light. So I did a lot of work on her and I got a call and she's like walking to the car by herself. I'm so proud of her. She's so proud of her. And so anyway, all is well. But people ask me why I don't believe in doctors all the time. I'm like, well, what was going on in the hospital with her did not make sense. And I go out there and they're kind of bullies. They looked at me and I said, "Is she leaving today?" And he said, "Well, we have to check this and we have to check that, and then we have to talk to the doctor." And then the nurse gets all really serious. She goes, "Are you willing to take her out against doctor's orders?" And I'm like, I stood up straighter, got to all of my 5'2.5" that I am, and I said, "If nothing else, I want to take her to a hospital closer to me." Bam. Like, she's getting out of your hospital one way or another. Made it very, very clear. So she came home. And I didn't have to put her in another hospital, so that was good. But she's doing a lot better. So thank you for listening to my tirade. I just, she's got health issues. I know that. She's not going to live to be 100. I know that. I don't expect that. But, they give her 3 times her seizure medication, and that could that could throw her into a really big seizure. That could make her a vegetable. That could kill her. And I'm just like, I'm okay if she goes naturally, but not if they kill her. That's another thing. Anyway, so what are we going to talk about today? You know what? Let's talk about grief. Because grief hits you like a ton of bricks sometimes. And I got to say, I hit some grief with this. It triggered me in many ways. And got a client, I deal with a lot of clients dealing with grief. I'm a client right now. And her husband died. Well, I've known her for 5 years. No, I've known her for 6 years. And I don't think it was really fresh then. So he's been gone for a while. And you walk in the house, and I can still feel him. It's pretty strong. It's not just me. A lot of other people have felt it too. She's holding on to him. And I'm sure it comforts her. I'm sure she feels like she's still loved. And it also means that we're keeping them from going on to the next part of what they're doing too. And I'm not sure that's okay. And it's keeping her from moving on. I don't think we're supposed to live in grief. Now, Lord knows I've had enough grief in my life, and some of it took longer to get out of than others. Grief isn't the end. Oh, I just read this quote from Pooh the other day. It was really cool. It was a purse. It was a purse that had the Naomi book on it, the Winnie the Pooh book on it, and the quote was, "We dream about each other so that," and I'm messing it up. "We dream about each other so that we don't know." It's how we keep somebody close to us is the ultimate gist of it, and it's true. We think about people, and if you ever like thought about somebody you hadn't seen in a long, long, long time, and then they show up in your world. I dreamed the other night about this guy I knew from junior high. Let me tell you, I have not thought about him since junior high. He was a nice guy. I didn't have a crush or nothing. He was a nice guy. And I don't know why I dreamt about him. It's very weird. Maybe he's thinking of me for some reason. Who knows? That's one reason sometimes we dream about somebody as they're thinking of us. And years ago, I had a friend that I hadn't seen in a decade, well over a decade. And my ex and I were talking. He was my ex. "Hey, whatever happened to this guy?" "I don't know. Do you know?" And like that week, I get a Facebook message from him. I'm like, holy cow. So these things are, we're all kind of telepathic, but we don't always notice it. And this is how we do it. You're thinking about somebody, and then all of a sudden the phone rings and they call, or they send a text message. Nobody calls people anymore, or they send you a text message, and it's like, oh, hey, right? So we need to, the love continues. Love doesn't die. It really doesn't. It changes. I was watching something last night. I couldn't remember what it was, but they said love changes. Nothing goes away, it just changes. And I'm like, that's so true. When my mother died, at first I was like, I remember looking out the window, watching all the cars go by. My world had stopped. I looked at all these cars going by. I'm like, how come they're not stopping? How come they're not? And of course, I knew like, they don't even know her, right? But there was this, second of like, they're being disrespectful. They don't. How can they just continue on about their lives? And of course, they don't know her. Their world didn't stop. Mine did. And you just keep, like, you got to keep getting up the next day. You got to keep doing the dishes. You got to keep doing the laundry. You got to keep going to work. You got to keep, so these things help you to kind of get back in the sway of things. And I also remember that first week looking in the mirror. Everybody always said how much my sister and I look like my mother. As we've gotten older, I think I look more like my father, and my sister looks more like my mother. But we also look very much alike. Oh, yeah, you can tell your sisters. So, but I looked in the mirror and I was like, she's literally in my DNA. I'm literally of her. She lives on through me. And that was a really poignant thing for me to recognize. And all the stuff she taught me lives on through me. A friend of mine just posted a beautiful obituary for her father. And, she's just heartbroken, right? And understandably so. Pretty sure her mom's passed on too. So now, there's that point where you become the first generation. And it's definitely a growth moment. It was most definitely a growth moment. And somebody wrote an absolutely beautiful obituary for her father. And, that's part of the healing. When my mother died, I had an uncle that died And my mom looks at me and she says, "You have to write the eulogy." Why do I have to do it? She says, "Well, it's my job and I can't do it. You're a good writer. You do it." Okay, mom. End up doing a really nice eulogy. But when my mom died, I had no words. No words at all. And my mom had songs for each one of us kids. And so I said, "This is what I can do." So I put together a little CD of the songs she had for each one of us. And I thought, well, we can just play this. Everybody's got their own way of dealing with grief. I did this, and my sister went through the roof. "You can't do that." What the hell is your problem? Like, I brought music, like it's on the background. I'm not saying we all have to sit there and listen through and stare at the music. I'm like, I brought music to do whatever people want with it. We won't get into my sister, but it's a different sister, by the way. If that one was almost dying, she loves the hospital, so she kind of gets what she deserves. But I mean, I don't wish any ill on her, and I don't wish anything bad for her. But anyway, we don't talk anymore. So, not my problem. Not my job to go in being Mama Bear and do the rescue, and that one's not my job. So, anyway, but we all deal with grief differently. And I knew that. And I just was like, "Hey, look, I'll let you deal with grief in your way. You let me deal with it in my way. You don't have to negate my grief just to make you happy." So you're dealing with grief. Everybody's going to deal with it differently. And that's what we got to do is everybody just has to keep taking the next step. When my dad died, I didn't have any words either. And there really was nobody else to say any words. Nobody that could say any words anyway. So to me, to see this obituary so beautifully written, I have no idea who wrote it. It might have been written. He was sick for a while. It might have been written months ago. Who knows? My mother died suddenly, so it was a little. It was a surprise. But he said, you're going to have different ways of dealing with the grief, and you've got to just allow people different ways of dealing with the grief. And one way we deal with the grief, when you become that first generation, where you can say an orphan, I don't care how old you are, you're still somebody's kid. And when you're nobody's kid anymore, it's different. You become different. And a lot of times you got to change something. Change something in your house. Your house needs to be a reflection of who you are. When you change, something in the house changes, right? When we go through changes like, oh, I need a new do, need new makeup, need a new outfit. That's good for a lot of stuff. But sometimes it needs to go deeper and it goes into our house. And a lot of times you don't know who the person you're becoming is. That's where I come in. So I have a very special technique that I work with people is I help them discover who that person is that they're becoming. I show them a beauty in them they didn't know was there. And I bring it to life. So as they're stepping into this new chapter of their life, be it a job promotion, becoming the first generation, divorce, widowhood, empty nesting, new job, new city. There's so many different ways that we become something new. And it's scary and it's exciting. Who do I want to be for the next part of my life? Isn't that an amazing question? And it sends chills up and down your spine. A, the possibility. B, oh my gosh, a lot can change. That change can be scary. Change can be exciting. And part of that is just acknowledging I can be somebody different for the next part of my life. I don't have to be the same person. And when these life events happen, you can't be the same person. You have no choice. It's a kick in the butt. You will change. You will grow. You will move forward. Some people then try to stay stuck. Some people are pretty good at staying stuck. But even that is a choice. And it's a growth experience. If you recognize that you're stuck, then you have another choice to make. Am I going to stay stuck or am I going to change? Sometimes the change is really hard. You know, you've been with somebody for 50 years. They're part of you. How do you continue on? How do you redo yourself? Well, the last time you were single, that was a whole different century. The world was so different 50 years ago. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. I drove a car the other day that was a 2004 and it was a top of the line Lexus, right? And I had to turn the lights on and off. There's like all these things. I'm like, oh, I'm so spoiled. I don't have to do these things anymore. And my car right now has got this automatic cruise control where it will slow down for you. It's kind of nice and kind of creepy all at the same time. But I'm we're in communication. Nice. Some days it's like, okay, cool, you can do this, and other days I'm like, my last car, the cruise control is broken, so I'm kind of not in the habit of using cruise control. But on long trips, it's really, really nice. So, what makes us choose to stay stuck, or what makes us choose to go forward? Most people, when the pain of staying stuck is worse than the pain of change. Right now, this lady's pain, she feels comfort in it. Another client, yeah, that one's going to be, I don't know how to say that one. Okay, that one's kind of weird. But anyway, so this lady, she feels more safe knowing this, that her husband is still around her, keeping that energy around her. She's very independent. She'd be fine, but it keeps that family. She's like, I'm never dating again. I've had my husband. I don't want nobody else. Which is a beautiful thing. And at the same time, if you enjoy being single, woohoo. If you don't, a lot of men marry quickly, and their kids often don't like it. Oh, they're replacing mom. They're not replacing mom. They're replacing loneliness. And oftentimes as men who are good husbands, they don't do well on their own, and many of them die within a year, or they find another woman. or something else that is very important. I think we don't let men have really great men relationships. Bro-ships. Is that a word? Bro-ships? You know, we have Galentine's Day. They don't have Bro-times Day. You know, we're like, we want to go out for Valentine's Day, and okay, I'm going to do it with my girls. If the guy's not stepping up, I'm going to gather my girls and we're going out. I don't think guys do that. They just kind of stay home and maybe they're like, yeah, it's a stupid Hallmark holiday. I don't have to do it. Cool. I don't know. But I think women have a much bigger circle to begin with, leaning on each other. And men often don't. Sometimes the only person they really get vulnerable with is their wife. And when she's not there anymore, they don't have that. They don't have an outlet anymore. And yes, those of us who are wives know that we do a lot that, they get spoiled, right? We do a lot of taking care of things that, they often don't even know about. But when you're part of a unit, there's two cogs and they're both working hard. And now all of a sudden there's only one cog. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot to handle. So, if you do have that happen, a parent dies, the other parent gets involved pretty quick. Doesn't mean they didn't love the old parent. It just means they need that companionship. We all need companionship. We discovered that during COVID, didn't we? We weren't meant to just live in our house by ourselves. We're meant to have community. We're meant to have people around us. And so seeking out to fill that void. Do we need to be in grief for 20 years? I don't think so. It's a really long time. It's a really long time to be in grief, and that's not fun. That's not enjoying life. Time to step up, time to step out. One way to do that is to make changes in the house. I had a client years ago. She wanted an Eames chair, and her husband would have bought her one, no question in my mind. He spoiled her. He loved her so much. And they just didn't have a place for it in their house. She got into this new place. He died, and she's like, this house is too big, and there's just too many memories. And she got in a new place. And the new place had these big windows overlooking the valley. First thing she said was, I want an Eames chair, and it's going right here. I'm going to sit, I'm just going to watch. It looked over this beautiful bridge, and the freeway was right there, and there's a valley there, lots of trees and birds and animals. There was a little patio there. She's like, I'm just going to sit here and watch the world. I'm going to watch the cars go by on the bridge. And that was the first thing we did. She says, I don't care what else we do. I want an Eames chair. Eames chair, if you don't know what it looks like, is if you remember Frasier. It was his chair. So it was the chair that was kind of up on the little balcony. That was a balcony. It was up higher than the rest, but that was it. The curved one, it's very pretty. So it wasn't on the main living room. It was up a little step. That's an Eames chair. And so it happened to be, I forget if it was 50th anniversary, 80th anniversary. I think it was 100. I don't think it was 100th anniversary. Maybe it was the 50th anniversary. It was a big anniversary, and they were doing a special. So we got a special and had a special stamp and everything. She was tickled silly. She got her own chair, and I don't know why she couldn't have had it before. But taking that step was such a big step for her. She'd always wanted a Eames chair, and now she had one. Pretty cool. She was excited, and that made a big difference. And then they'd always had a picture of him over the fireplace. You know, they were married for 50 odd years. And she's like, well, I don't want to do that. But it feels weird not having him over the fireplace. So we found she had this scarf. His name was Jack. It was Jack and Jackie. Isn't that cute? So Jack belonged to a lot of clubs. And they were on the Spanish Steps in Rome. And she saw this scarf. It was a Jack of clubs. And she was like, oh, for whatever reason, they didn't get it. But the next day, like right before they left on their plane, he went and got it. So we framed the scarf. And that was how we kept Jack over the fireplace. But it wasn't a picture of Jack because that was too much for her. We had his picture somewhere else. But we had to change, you know. She wanted to honor him, but she didn't want to feel like a mausoleum. She didn't want to feel like he was missing. And he would come times in that space. I felt him many times. He was so happy with what we did. And she loved it. It was really an amazing space for her. We got to do everything only for her. She went from her father's house to his house. And, you know, she had a lot of say in things. But this was the first time she got to decorate just for her only. And she had a blast with it. One thing she told me, I remember too, we got to her bedroom and she says, I want a purple bed. She said, I want a lavender bedroom. Okay, we can do that. So we found this Georgia O'Keeffe picture of this flower. It was a butterfly. It became her butterfly room. That's what she called it, her butterfly room. I found this fabric that was this gorgeous silk embroidered butterflies and I showed it to her and she loved it. And this was a big window and she looks at me and wait, no, she'd done this before. She knew what she was getting into. She knew it was an expensive fabric and she knew it was way too expensive to do the whole drapery. No, she's gonna do a valance with this. And then I found these silks and I said, I got 2 shades of lavender to go with this. So one was more like an eggplant and one was lavender. It was lavender. And I said, and both colors were in the embroidered fabric. I said, so what if we take this? Okay. Sorry. Oh, sorry. What if we take this and we alternate panels? So it's dark and light and dark and light and dark and light. And that just showed off. Oh my God, it showed off the other fabric so beautifully. I said, and then we can make shams for the bed with a butterfly fabric. And then we can have one side of the duvet, the light color, and the other side of the duvet, the dark color. She said, oh, I can have a summer and spring and a winter and fall. I said, there you go. She loved it. Painted the walls this beautiful soft lavender. She was in heaven. When somebody comes to me and says, I want this, especially with that much conviction, yeah, why not? Why not? Let's do it. Let's make it beautiful. There's so many colors out there. There's so many different fabrics out there. I have a client I'm working with right now. And yeah, I always say, it's not worth arguing over something if one of the spouses doesn't like something, because there's more stuff out there. So I found this tile. My God, it's so pretty. It looks like fish scales. And the colors are very rich. They're teals, greens, and golds, and it's beautiful. And so I brought it up into the house, and she wasn't there, but he was there. I put it up against the wall, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And he comes in, he's like, "Oh my God, Jeanette, this is amazing!" A few other workers came in, like, "This is amazing!" But she wasn't there. So then we met a different time, not at the house, and I showed it to her, and she looks at it and goes, "I don't like it." I'm like, "It's all her colors, it's her shape, it's this, it's that." And I'm like, I just was kind of floored. And I said, "Well, I got this choice too." She, "Oh, that's much better." Okay, we'll try that. So I left it out, went back to my car. I got a few more samples, and I left that on the table. While I was gone, the husband's like, "You really didn't like this. It's really beautiful. Really, it's this, it's that." And he starts like pushing, like, why, what reasons why she should like it. So they're still deciding. But I haven't heard. As far as I know, they're still deciding. I haven't heard if they made a decision yet. So we've got a couple other things before we got to make that decision. So it's cool. But I'm just like, she hates it. She hates it. We just have to go next. There's no point in having something that she hates. There's no point in having anxiety or angst over something that doesn't work. So I still hope she gets the fishtails. I really do. The other tile's nice, but I really want her to have the fishtails. So, but it's not me living there. It's them. And they got to live there, and she's got to love it. That's the number one rule, is you got to love it. If you don't love it, it doesn't belong there. So anyway, changing your house can really help with dealing with grief. Creating that new image of who you are, who you want to be, is an amazing way to get in touch with who you're trying to be for the next part of your life. So, hey, I was just wondering, we've been asking you guys have questions, and I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, wow, this has gone by really fast. Hey, Mark, did we have any questions that came in?
I haven't checked the email, but I don't think so far. But I did have a question for you about grief and everything, because unfortunately, grief has impacted my own clients and friends and everything like that. Because I had a friend who lost his dad on Saturday, this past Saturday, and he buried him on Monday. But he was an older friend and everything like that. I mean, not the friend was older, but the father was older. He was in his late 90s. But then one of our founders here on the network was actually helping a friend of hers arrange for services. I don't know if the guy's passed yet or not, but the person is younger. So does the grief impact us differently when the people that are passing away are at different stages of their life and everything like that? So that was my question for you about grief.
Oh,
Like I
100%.
would think that you are already somewhat expecting somebody to be in their 90s or hundreds to not have that much longer to live anyway. And I think he had like a fall, but then he was ready to go. It sounded like he was ready to go himself and everything. Whereas I don't know about the young person and everything like that. So just wondering your thoughts on age.
100% it matters. I mean, losing a child, like, that's, nobody wants to talk about that grief. That's a whole different experience than losing somebody in their 80s.
Right.
It depends on what your relationship is with them. My mom died very suddenly. It was a shock. Um, she wasn't showing any kinds of, she was slowing down. My mom had polio and she was slowing down, but she'd kind of been slowing down for decades and nobody really thought about it. And what polio does is it goes after different parts of the body until it gets to the heart and then it doesn't go no more.
Right.
And so that's kind of what happened with her. But she was still doing everything. She wasn't, you know, she was still doing everything. So we didn't think that this was on its way. So that was a surprise. And she was 72. So, you know, not young, not old, but you know, that's different. My grandmothers passed when they were in their 90s. And, you know, like you can say, hey, they had a good life, you know?
Yeah.
My one grandmother, she'd been sick for a while and in the hospital for a while and it's kind of a relief. My dad, you know, he was in a lot of pain at the end and I'm like, when he went, it was like, okay, I'm happy he's out of pain. And not everybody is able to say that. I had my client this morning, I saw, and her brother had died like an hour before she saw me. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And I said, were you kind of expecting this? And she's like, well, I'm the baby and he's much older than me and da da da. And so she's like, no, he was sick for a while. It's a relief. And some people, when you say that, it's like, oh, you can't say like you're glad somebody died. But honestly, when somebody's in pain for a long time, I think it is a nice thing to say. And it is a relief that they're not in pain anymore. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to say. I don't think it's something that you should make somebody feel bad for. They're just being realistic. Does that mean they're going to miss them? No. When somebody is sick like that for a long time, you've already mourned them in many stages. I have a friend, her mother's got Alzheimer's and she's taking care of her. And her mother's like 90 something. And she's otherwise in excellent health, but she doesn't know who her daughter is most days. And, you know, she's like, I'm not taking care of my mom. I'm taking care of, you know, Helene. She doesn't, and she even calls her mom Helene sometimes. She doesn't call her mom. She's like her mom, she's already buried her mom. Like the person that was her mother, she's grieved over that woman over and over and over many times is as it, you know, slowly slipped away. She's grieved and grieved and grieved. So when the time comes, will there be sadness? Yeah, but there's going to be a lot of relief because, you know, she's been doing a lot of caretaking and you know, hopefully she's in a better place and that's you know, there is an element of like burnout when you're taking care of some of these diseases. There's an element of burnout of like, oh my gosh, like, so there is an element of, oh, okay, I don't have to do this anymore. And you're glad the person's not in pain. So I think that based on my own experience, that's a much easier grief because you've been grieving for them. You know, my dad, it was probably a good 6 months that he was really on the downhill slide. We were fortunate. It wasn't longer than that, but by the time he died, it was like, yeah, okay. And he was 88. So that's different than somebody who's 36 and even has a long illness. I have a dear friend who's a couple of years younger than me, and she's got stage 4 cancer. And you know, I'm watching stage by stage by stage, and there's not much I can do.
Yeah,
and it's frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And she keeps going back to the doctors and they say this and then they say that and then they say this and they say that. And all I can do for her is be there and tell her I love her and let her have somebody that she can be afraid with. During COVID, I had a friend and we had met doing dancing, and we really helped each other out a lot during the beginning stages of COVID. But then he came down with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And it took him a good month to tell me. And I was like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And he wouldn't tell me. And he finally told me. And the first thing after he told me was, he said, Jeanette, I don't want you to do any energy work on me. And I said, I respect that. Pancreatic cancer is a tough fight. It's a very tough fight.
Mm-hmm.
And his fight was less than 6 months. I think it was started in September. He was gone by December.
Oh, wow.
So, that was a choice he made. And he was 65. And I kind of teased him. I said, you just don't want to see how this whole pandemic thing ends. And he goes, well, you're not the first person to say that.
Not the person, probably was
And,
the last.
So, but he made his choice. And my job as his friend was just to, like, hey, I'm here for you. Now, when it did get bad and he asked me, I said, if you lose consciousness and stuff like that, do you want me to do anything to assist you in leaving? And he said, no. And I said, okay, I respect that. Is what you do to help, you just give them love. That's why they have like angels unaware and they call them death angels in the hospital. And you just got to give them energy and love. And so anyway, so then I was visiting one day and he says, I'm ready to go. And he didn't ask, but he asked. And I'm like, okay. So I poured as much love to him as I could to give him the energy to do what he had to do to go. Because death is like a birth canal. The baby takes a lot of energy to be born, and it takes a lot of energy to die. So anyway.
That makes sense. What about the grief of pets and everything like that?
I can't hear you.
What about the grief of pets? Because I know you've lost some pets. I've definitely lost some pets, and sometimes we don't realize that we have to grieve that loss too. I mean, that we all know the story.
Oh, certainly.
We all know the story of the kid that is told to flush the fish down the swimming pool, but sometimes they also have to have like some sort of ceremony because they were part of the family, even if it was a little fish.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, again, what was your relationship. Now, pets are truly unconditional love. So, there's grief, but it's how close were you to the pet. Now, over the summer, I buried a cat, and he was a rescue, and he didn't like to be too close to anybody. And with what he'd gone through, I mean, the trauma he'd obviously gone through, I don't blame him. But he was, I ended up taking him to put him down, and we put him in the yard, and the house felt very lonely for a good month. And, I think you just have to allow its path, again, now I had another cat that was sick for a while. She died right after we split up, and she got sick, and I was like, you can't leave me right now. And so she waited a year before she died. And I was so grateful for that. Gave me a year to kind of get myself out of one grief, and then the next one came. And by the time she came, she'd been sick, and by the time I brought her in, she could hardly walk. And I'm like, okay, it's time. And so, yeah, I missed her, but she was also, 14, 15 years old, and, she'd given everything she could, so I think that, and also people have different relationships with death. They say that I'm a Scorpio, and they say that Scorpios deal with death better than other signs. I don't know, but I've had a lot of death in my life. Maybe that's part of it. Some people are so afraid of death that any mention of it. Years ago, I belonged to this Bible study, and there's a lady in it who was well into her 60s, and her mother was still alive, and her mother had Alzheimer's really bad, didn't know who she was, and mom was pushing 100. And she'd come into Bible study and it was like, oh, pray for my mom to get better, pray for my mom to get better, pray for my mom to get better. She was so afraid of her mother dying that she couldn't see what was right in front of her eyes. There's only one way mom's getting better, and it ain't going to be in this world. When my dad was in the hospital, they were like, oh, yeah, he can get better. I'm like, any idiot could see my dad was dying and had, hours to days left in this world, weeks at the very most. And they're sitting there coming in going, oh, yeah, well, we need to do a bone marrow test on him. And then, well, maybe we can do chemo and we can keep him alive. And I'm like, he ain't going to make it through the bone marrow test. And he's not going to go in the middle of a bone marrow test. That's not a pleasant way to go. Mm-hmm. And, they did the same thing to my cat. They wanted to do a polyp surgery on my cat. And he wouldn't have made it through the polyp surgery, but they wanted to do it the next day. We got to do it fast. You got to come in the next day. And I was like, well, okay, I need to think about this and see where I can get the money to pay for this. Mm-hmm. And the next morning I woke up and that cat was very clearly, it was not a polyp. It was something much more serious. And there was only one way that this was going to go. And so I think people try to hold on. Some people are afraid of death and what that means. They're afraid of being alone. They're afraid of missing that person so much. And so they hold on. And if it means having another person in pain, just so that you don't have to be, you're only prolonging the inevitable. So I think there's different ways that people have relationships with death, and some are very, very afraid of it. I mean, we saw that during COVID. How many people? People were freaking out. There was a lot of people freaking out because they were afraid to die. And I've not been ready to die. But there's a difference between not being ready and being scared. And I don't know what makes people scared to die. I don't know if it's how they've lived their life. I don't know if it's they don't have a relationship with their maker. I don't know. But I mean, I've not accomplished everything I would want in this world, but most of my stuff I'm okay with. Like, I don't have big secrets. I don't have huge regrets. I don't have, I think if you live honestly, people are afraid in the spiritual world. A lot of people are afraid to die because, they don't know what comes next. It's a big change. Or because they haven't. But it was very interesting when my dad was dying. I was trying to give him some energy to go, and he pulled his hand away from me. He didn't want me to do it. And I was like, we were like, Dad, go see Mama. It's okay. You got her permission to go. And he just kept saying, I'm not ready yet. And I didn't see anything when he died. I didn't feel anything. I didn't see any angels. I saw when my patch died, I did see something, but I didn't see anything with him. And it was very clear that there was something going on that he was working on. And I don't know what that was. And I don't know, there was definitely something ethereal going on with the way that he was talking, because it wasn't a I don't want to go. It wasn't, but it was clearly like he was packing. That was the feeling, like I'm packing and I'm not done packing yet. And that's the best analogy I can give to what he said and how he said it. And when he was done packing, that's when he was able to go. But it was very clear that there was something he was doing on a spiritual level that was not something that we could see or feel. And I find that very intriguing. And it's already the end of the show. So if you got questions on how to make your house prettier, grief, healing, any of the stuff we've talked about today, I would love to talk to you. You can call me at 626-485-6354. You can email me at design@thecolorwhisperer.com. I would love to help you. And one of the things we love to do on this show is talk about Can-Do Spice, because we got to have good health. And one way to do that is with Can-Do Spice, and put good health in your food so that you can have a brighter outlook. So, Mark, can we go to the commercial? Did we lose Mark? Mark's had his head in the same spot for a while. I think he's frozen. He's probably working on another show. I know there's another show after mine, and maybe he's getting that one set up, but that's okay. We will have Can-Do Spice very, very soon. I know this because he's always paying attention. So he kind of probably got called out of the room for a minute, maybe. Anyway, but I'm here to help, guys. Life is tough, and there's no one way to do it, but I know a lot of ways that can help ease grief, help ease pain, and if I can be of assistance, that's what I'm here for. All right. Hey, Mark, come on, it's time to go. I wonder if I know any jokes I can tell you. Lighten things up. A guy went into a bar. No, I'm teasing. Was a duck, a chicken, and a goat go into a bar. No.
Duck and chicken went into the bar? Where did they go to the bar for? They went into the bar and had a good time at the bar?
I guess so. I don't know what they do in the bar.
When's the last time you were in a bar?
Hey, we're ready for some Can-Do Spice.
I had to adjust the speakers and the folders, so that's part of what I was doing, was adjust the folders. So I actually got the Can-Do Spice ready for you, because otherwise you're going to have lime cake and everything. So I had to switch folders. So that's part of what I was doing. So we got Can-Do Spice.
No worries. I told him you were doing something.
If
I knew you were doing something important.
If I had to adjust the folders. But we got the right one for Can-Do Spice. So let's have some Can-Do Spice. You ready for Can-Do?
I'm ready for Can-Do Spice.
Yeah, it's always good to have some Can-Do Spice. Let's go have some Can-Do Spice.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends, so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can-Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can-Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.